think it smells like popcorn where I start the discussion.
Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
Welcome to Fandoms, a show from every fan's point of view, brought to you by the Nerd Initiative Network. Here's your hosts, Tony and Michael.
Right. I'm good. How you doing, my friend? Hmm. Allegedly, we have no audio.
That would be me. You could be heard. I could not, because the one button I was tasked to turn on when I switched to our stream. So let's try this again. Welcome to Fandoms, everybody. I'm Tony, better known in social media as Mr. Marvelite, and next to me is my partner, Michael Rothman. How are you doing, Michael? Well, you already said
I'm doing very, very well. Right. And thank you to the Peanut Gallery for the no audio notification. That's awesome.
I know. So like I said, this is our first episode of Fandoms. This could end up being any type of show. We've already had suggestions from those amazing people that had a part in this to make some things fun. And there are a couple zingers probably throughout the episode. Mind you, between like life events and everything else going on, you know, it's like there's the idea of this is where I want things to go. And it's like, this is where I was able to get to. And if I'm anywhere better than this, I'm fantastic. So thankfully, you know, we have a great team. And I think we have some great content tonight. So a couple things to talk about that wasn't mentioned in some of our segments. Let's first go ahead and touch on She-Hulk episode 3. Now, we have a panel coming out shortly on YouTube. But what was your impressions from this last episode of She-Hulk? And I guess since we're like, you know, I haven't been able to do any of the panels yet because of my schedule. Mm-hmm. You know, I might do a quick recap of the first two as well. But what was your thoughts from episode 3?
Yeah, so we Donovan, who the audience will meet later on when he goes over the new House of Dragons as well. So that look forward to that. But he hosted a panel today, and we were on it talking about episode 2 and 3. I like the show. I mean, the summary that we said during the panel was, I think people need to understand that each of these projects from Marvel is going to bring a different variety. So Miss Marvel is going to be different than I Am Groot. I Am Groot was like 5 minutes long. And then you have She-Hulk, which I think is 100% a satire. I said, you know, I really relate it to it's a female Deadpool, feels like to me. Very kitschy, very satire. There's in episode 3, the guy, was it Dennis or Doug? Who's the guy that is a complete male chauvinist? Like, he is turned up to like a 15, right? So everything, and even in episode 2, when she is hired as like the token superhero, right? The token Hulk. Right. That's obviously a satire of what's going on currently as we're heading towards equality and we're heading towards trying to be more fair in the workplace. You know, some women and other people of different walks of life wonder, am I getting hired for the right reasons, or is it my skills and talents? So I think a lot of this really is a good mix of obviously very modern storytelling. And I think it's also, they take it to a new level. And the last thing I will say is Tim Roth is just a breath of fresh air back in the MCU. I think a different take on Abomination and Emil, but I just love him so much, and his scenes are just scene-stealing scenes. So I really hope there's more of him to come in the series. But I think it's a really fun series.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of funny when you talk about Tim Roth. When I first watched Incredible Hulk, and I saw him, you know, in his progress toward becoming Abomination, my first thought was, he's a junkie. like he's power hungry, and he still doesn't have the same power. And so it's like you get the high of being able to like run faster than everybody else and jump higher, but then you still can't beat your opponent. So what's the next thing you do? Is you go for the next high, and that was like a drug addiction story in a sense. And the way he went, and he's like, it was against my volition. You know, I was under the influence of all of this, and obviously he's gotten more control of his feelings and his emotions. He definitely has that that persona of I'm reformed, but at the same time he could also be going a little bit too far. Like obviously he has no problem becoming the Abomination, and at the same time he had no problem you know, participating in the battle with Wong in Shang-Chi. So there is that
Just another weird storyline, like another weird.
And even the credits for episode 3, where you see his 7 soulmates crying as the bus is leaving, that was part of the story. And I think everybody forgets these title cards. Like for Miss Marvel, it was beautiful. They were beautiful. They depicted like the culture and like, you know, with Jersey City and everything. But for She-Hulk, it's a continuation of the story. And I don't think that's to be overlooked. He convinced these soulmates to pave his way, but he's in a bus leaving them and they're crying. We don't know everything that's going on with him. But yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Were you disappointed when you found out the 7 soulmates were the 7 I was a little disappointed because as of episode 2, when he said my 7 soulmates, I thought he was talking about the Thunderbolts. I thought he was saying, oh, my pen pals. And I was like, oh, is it going to be, U.S. Agent and
like Valentina and everybody coming
together?
Yeah, so I don't think so. I think what would have happened is if it were the Thunderbolts involved, I feel like Valentina would have just gotten him commuted his sentence to be under the, you know, kind of like the Suicide Squad. I forget what the exact name of the task force group, what they call themselves. But it's like the Amanda Waller, they're still incarcerated, but they're unloaned by her. And so I don't think Valentina would have necessarily needed for him to be on parole. I think it would have been like he's on loan to the government to pay to commute for his sins. Yeah. So I was not disappointed by that. No. I thought it was even funnier that he literally is like, and it, again, this is like it's a satire of what actually happens. There are people who glorify serial killers and everything else. I mean, like how many people were in
JJ said it gave him Charlie Manson vibes, like 100%. Yeah. Like Charlie, you know, these there's definitely people out there from all walks of life that hold, you know, serial killers up to this weird, you know, standard and get married, and it's weird, but yeah, it really did give kind of like Charlie Manson kind of vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Or even like Ted Bundy, because like he was a looker. Well, I guess he was. I did do nothing for me. Like if Ryan Reynolds started like offing people and was in jail, I would probably write to him. But like if like Ted Bundy, no interest whatsoever. Now, what was your thoughts about? And again, this is spoilers, guys. Like if you haven't, I would feel like it's Friday. If you haven't seen She-Hulk by now, and if you've been on TikTok, it's over with. You already know what's going on because of the outrage and upset. You know. Not from, which is surprisingly, not from chauvinistic or toxic masculinity being called out through the social media videos. Find your own superpower. Like literally, that's like a take from whatever. But the
people were also upset about the twerking post-credit scene.
Yes,
and I'm
just that's. And listen, I will sit there when I watch the live stream, and you guys can go back to Stream Lounge IO and you can watch the live stream that we recorded when it dropped. And I remember like when it happened, I'm sitting there like, okay, we're going to get to it. And then it was a twerking, and I thought it was hilarious, but I'm sitting there going, that was going to break the internet? Like,
thank you.
That's the only thing I felt.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
It was definitely overhyped, and I don't think it takes away from the show. And I think it fits in line with the post-credit scene of episode 2 was her lifting up the car and helping the dad and the brother change a tire. So I think it fits in. Again, it's kind of a Deadpool type show.
Yeah.
And so I think like I'm not one, and I said this earlier, I am definitely not one to generalize. I think if you don't like a certain movie or a show or whatever, I'm not going to put you in a box and say, you're this or that. I think everyone individually can have their own opinions. I do think though, like there's probably a lot of Deadpool fans out there who are probably like, oh, I don't like this show. And I want to be like, hey, just take another look and think about it, because they're really similar in satire and joking and whatever. And so
exactly. And that's the thing. Like, and again, this, you have all these people that gatekeep with these comics and stuff. Now, I've never been one to read a lot of She-Hulk comics, just because like when I went into, I always went for the team ups, and it was mainly X-Men. And so She-Hulk, like I'd catch her with like maybe a West Coast Avengers or, you know, something like that. But if you go back and even just read some of the ones that the QR codes would lead to, you can tell there is like this objectifying of her on the cover, but she calls it out throughout the stories. Like the whole idea was, you know, she even says like, oh, you know, they put me in the cover like this, like literally like a whirlwind, and she's not wearing anything. And she's like, okay, this is just to sell comics, blah, blah, blah. But they're upset that she objectified herself. When we saw Tony Stark get drunk in Iron Man 2 and wet himself in his suit in front of all of those people and then start blowing glasses. And then he's like, you know, give me a sick beat to beat my buddy. Like, that's okay. But
that there's a filtration system so you can drink that pee from
that
Tony.
Didn't make it any better.
It's vastly different.
Listen, that was like the Waterworld reference I did not need. You cannot pee into a Mr. Coffee and get Taster's Choice. It just doesn't work that way. But absolutely, I think I just find it funny. Like my only thing out of the episode was I really thought that there was this groundbreaking like thing that was going to happen at the end.
What did you think it was?
I didn't know. I didn't know if it was like Titania was reporting back to Doom. Like she is on the phone and she's like, Victor, I tried. Like even that would have been like, would have given me chills. But it was fun. I mean, like honestly, like I knew if Megan Thee Stallion was going to be in the MCU, it was going to be her being her. And I love the light elf, the whole manipulation.
That's
playing
great.
on that. What everybody realizes, and I said this in my reaction video, it's all about making the MCU more not necessarily realistic, but bringing it more ground level. I have always wanted to see how the MCU looked like to the people that lived in it. That's why I love things like Item 47. I liked Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because you had like people that were like even with the Netflix stuff. There was a guy with the bootleg copies of like the Battle of New York and you know all that kind of stuff. That it made it look more real. Like how do people live in this knowing that there are these superpowered beings? And then the questions about insurance and everything else, and like even people like I loved how the news was like, is it true that you were rejected by the Avengers? And it's like she's escaping. You know, rumor has it that she was rejected by the Avengers, and it's just one person after another, which is exactly what we do on TikTok. We hear one report from somebody, and then we immediately go and we go off of that, and we don't do our research, and then we look kind of foolish.
Well, and then we can move on. But I think also the Blonsky thing, we're like, are you having Abomination's baby? And again, it fits in line to all the stereotyping stuff, and like the fact that they're taking it like they're. If you can't tell this is a satire, that's you know I don't know what to say. Like it's so obvious. Like obvious, you know, like exactly. Oh, a woman can't represent a male criminal without being like, oh, are you having his baby or what? I mean, it's so obvious.
Or how about this? You can't have a female-led show without a bunch of toxic men talking about how worthless it is. Like I'm so tired. If I hear the term mid or MCU, and I love how like a lot of people are owning it with the shirts like MCU because I'm all for that. We've had three phases where it was a majority male-led cast and male-led superheroes. You know, all we're doing is catching up to the fact that there is another half of the universe that represents, you know, a completely different demographic. Let's go for it. But yeah, absolutely.
The last thing I will say though that I wanted to say was that I really, if I had one dream, I want to be in the writer's room. And I say this, and I hope I can say this live because I fully believe they are taking mushrooms and smoking, and because the storylines that come out, and in a good way, I think they are just like they are leaning into not only like the toxicity and having fun and joking around about that, but to what you said, like the elf that's kind of Loki like, that shapeshifter, that Megan Thee Stallion. It's just the storylines, the guy Dennis who is literally out of like a caricature. He's literally a walking New Yorker cartoon. And so these women and men who are doing this are having a blast with it, and it must be like a party in that room, because there's no way they're not enjoying this.
And I think the biggest thing is we have to realize, like, this is as close to comic book movie, like comic book content has gotten. You know, we had these, you know, you go back to X-Men and you had the black leather suits, and the characters really didn't depict themselves. And I'm still do not forgive Bryan Singer for the depiction of Rogue being my favorite X-Men. And then you have, like, you know, the MCU where it came in, and like even like if you look at like the evolution of Scarlet Witch, you know, with Elizabeth Olsen, like everything was like, and of course this has a lot to do with the fact that, you know, we had, you know, he who shall not be named directing Age of Ultron, but it's like corsets and cleavage, and then we finally moved on, and Elizabeth Olsen even voiced that she didn't like that, and then we get that WandaVision where we get that honest. Like, we get a throwback to the comic books with the Halloween costume, but then we also get a more comic book accurate MCU outfit that, even in Multiverse of Madness, regardless of what people think of that movie, the costume was part of the story. It showed how corrupted she was. Yeah. And it was, I mean, it's amazing. And then you have like Miss Marvel, which, like, that, I feel like it pulls right off of the page. And, you know, and then you have someone like Iman Vellani who idolized this character and was cosplaying as this character and now is this character. So it's great. We're now more comic book than ever, and the comic book gatekeepers are kind of like, this is not working. This is not how it is. The comic books are more serious, and I'm like, you know, they are animated pictures, right?
But like, also, like, I think, look, we were, you know, I was saying this earlier with a friend. I think it was JJ. There's no way, unless you have all the time in the world, there's no way. There's very few people who have read all the storylines, all the comics. There's so much. We have 80 years of material, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you have comics, like, there are series and runs and, you know, characters that you skip. It's just, you know, you pick and choose what you want. I think we have to allow this to happen on the scale of TV and shows and movies. Like, you're not gonna, again, I made a joke earlier, like, I Am Groot was, I guess, fun for kids and whatever. It wasn't my cup of tea. It was short. It was this little. It was cute. It was cute. I watched it. I kind of, you know, whatever. Yeah. But like, you're gonna like some stuff and you're not gonna like some stuff, and that's okay. And I think there's an ownership that people have, and that's fair, and it's great that they're passionate, but they also can't delve into being nasty and toxic and hurtful and hateful for other people. Let people have their moment, have their characters, have a blast, and pick and choose who you like and what you want to watch, and try to learn something. It's fine to talk to someone, be like, oh, why do you like that so much? You know, whatever. Oh, I missed that. Like, I still remember with WandaVision, we gave up. Me and my wife gave up the first episode because I really thought, I guess I didn't really look into it too much and I wasn't fully invested at the time, but I thought it was going to be this weird random 60s show. And I was like, well, I don't want to watch that. But I'm not going to hate on it. And then someone was like, no, you idiot. It's going to evolve. And so I was like, okay, cool. And I watched like second, third. I was like, oh, I see what's happening here. And yeah, I was kind of silly and dense and foolish. And it's a great show. And so I think people need to give things a chance, that they're not like going with an open mind, and they might end up liking it a lot more than they think.
I think that's the way to kind of like end the conversation on it is, you know, I think the problem with a lot of the complaints are people have their own preconceived expectation of what it's going to be. And it's not going to ever meet that. I mean, look at what happened with No Way Home. Everyone had their own ideas of what it was. But I think it's funny because, like, we have this whole, you know, the more fun version that's out today. You know, everybody kind of knows what they're going into, except for some people are like, you've already seen the reports, like, oh, there was going to be like a fight between Toby and Goblin. There wasn't. You know, there's more content, but it's really a little bit more dialogue than anything. But it's still, if you're interested in that and you want to have more of that engagement, it's definitely worth a watch. I have not seen it yet, so I'm going by what other people have told me. But absolutely, I think that's the thing. We have to be open-minded. We have to be willing to kind of go into that. Now, on top of all of this, we have got some segments that are made by our content creators in Nerd Initiative. So we're going to go ahead and first talk about upcoming movies. And Pooja from Samosas and Popcorn has a take on that. So let's go ahead and see what Pooja has to say.
Hello, this is Pooja from Samosas and Popcorn bringing you the latest news in film. First, we have The Invitation, which is about a young woman who reconnects with a long-lost family member and is invited to a lavish wedding, only not everything is quite what it seems. Next up is Breaking, which stars John Boyega as a Marine veteran as he attempts to hold a bank robbery and hold several people hostage. A Prime Video original, Sylvester Stallone returns to the spotlight as The Samaritan, a movie about a long-lost superhero who is thought to have gone missing until his younger neighbor pushes him back into the limelight in order to save their city. A Wild Cautionary Tale, Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba star in 3,000 Years of Longing, which is about an academic who comes across a djinn and ends up making 3 different wishes. Netflix's new Korean movie Soul Vibe takes place during the 1988 Olympics as a team of baby drivers attempt to uncover the corruption behind slush funds. Lastly, we have Hung for Jesus, Save Your Soul, a satirical comedy movie starring Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. The movie covers the comeback of a church after a scandal regarding its pastor has gone public. Well, that's all we got for film this week. Back to you guys.
That was awesome. I will be honest with you. I am super excited about The Samaritan because I didn't know anything about it. And it's kind of one of those like surprise superhero films. I'm almost curious. Like I don't know anything about it. And I want to go back and watch kind of the trailers because I wonder if it's going to be like Stallone's Birdman.
Oh, good call. I also, it's funny. I come from the same place. We were talking about it while the clip was playing. Until I watched Pooja's video, I thought it was like, I mean, look, a lot of these guys, Stallone, there's a lot of names I could think of, but I'm going to blank right now. They start to, their action careers go down a little bit. I thought this was another one of those revenge plots, like his wife, his family was taken from him and the Good Samaritan steps up. And then I watched Pooja's video and it's like, oh, it's a retired superhero that went to hide. I had no idea. And so now I want to watch it.
I know exactly what you're thinking about because you're thinking about Gerald Butler's
Yes.
Law-Abiding Citizen. Like just the title.
Jamie Foxx, right?
Oh, it's the Samaritan. And yeah. So absolutely. That's kind of when you first look at it. And I literally, when I was preloading this stuff and adding the posters and I saw like the puddle in the poster where it had him with his costume, I'm like, oh, I want to see this. I definitely want to see this. So that's very cool. I'm excited.
And I'm not just saying that, but literally she just won me over with watching this. Obviously we saw these clips ahead of time, but watching that clip, I was like, no, I want to see this now. And so my hat's off to you, Pooja, for an amazing little preview there.
Yeah, and then also for the invitation, what was it? I can't remember. Juju has been doing these things. Straw Hat Goofy has been doing these comparisons where he'll talk about a movie and he'll give like two comparisons, like 2 movies that kind of like describe. I can't remember what the other one was, but the one that one of the movies that he used was the one Ready or Not. And so like with the invitation, like I from what I understand, I think it's like vampires, but he put it on the veil of like Ready or Not, which I thought was a fantastic movie.
Yeah, great movie.
But yeah, I definitely I think there's a lot of good movies coming out, and since we're on a roll with kind of sharing, and this is a little bit out of topic, but I wanted to go ahead with all of the announcements that have been happening the last couple of weeks. Why don't we take a moment and we do a segment sharing what we can look forward to coming up with DC and Warner Brothers Discovery. Oh, that's
I'm
right.
so excited about that.
There's
so
not
much
much at all
coming up.
I mean, other than we know we're gonna get what was it Black Adam. We're getting Black Adam, and whatever that that other movie is, I don't follow. I think it's like a rom-com, but let's just face it.
I will say, like, me and my wife tried to watch. I used to love The Flash, and I know that's not. I mean, that's not canon, but it's still DC. Like,
You mean the show?
Yeah, and I tried. The movie needs to not come out, but we don't have to get into that. But the show, I'm a Grant Gustin fan. The first few seasons of The Flash I thought were phenomenal. And just we tried to watch season 8, and we were so bummed. It's peak CW. It's so cheese. So I'm sure some people like it. It lost me. But
I'm sorry. I loved Captain Cold. That was my thing.
Great.
But okay, here's the thing. It was hard for me. Like, I watched some of The Flash, I watched some of the Arrow, and again, the reason why I jumped into those was because I was a huge, and I still am, I'm a huge Smallville fan. Like, I have like the collector's edition thing. I've met some of the people. I have autographs. One I won't explain because they're in jail right now. And I just was extremely excited. And then they went a completely different direction with was it like Harley, the guy who played Green Arrow in Smallville, did not come back for Arrow. I did like Stephen Amell as Arrow, but then after about season 4, I kind of like stopped. They
go downhill, right? Like, I think Arrow was great.
It only can go so far before it gets really wonky. I mean, like Legends of Tomorrow, they were fighting. What wasn't like one of the things they were fighting a giant like fuzzy monster. And which was great. Like, I love that they're able to take those risks. But like Captain Cold and his brother, which I can't remember his name right now.
The guys from Jailbreak,
right? Prison Break. I could not get past that show. Like, why would you put two brothers back together, like the two actors back together to do this? Yes, they had chemistry on the show, but in a weird way. And if you've watched Prison Break, it was an extremely high anxiety, like riddled, like it was one of those things where it's like, I feel like my life sometimes gets stuck in that, where it's like you think everything's going well, and then the last 10 seconds, everything goes awry, and you're like, what in the world? But yeah, I always thought it was funny that they chose to bring them back. And someone's saying in the comments, Superman and Lois is fantastic. They've done a wonderful job with that.
That's a good point.
I think because they're doing more of the nuclear family with that, I think it plays really well, and I definitely like that with him.
I also like Titans. I do like Titans.
Yep.
That's definitely an adult version. If you've seen that, I mean, I'm not going to curse, but that trailer featuring Nightwing, I think that's a great cast as well. It's a little, some moments there that's a little whatever. I did also Doom Patrol. I think was pretty solid too. I
was disappointed that they discontinued that.
Yeah,
but we are getting a another season of Harley Quinn, the animated series, which has been really well acclaimed, which makes completely sense. It's kind of funny though, because so Harley Quinn was based off of a soap opera character that was played by an actress named Arlene Sorkin, who was actually the daughter of my dentist, and so. Like I was always like, that was my claim to fame. Like, I know, like I'm pretty sure I've met her, but it was probably before.
It also sounds like a murder movie. I don't think I could go to that dentist, like, because like you said, it's I could just picture her putting me under, and then suddenly like all my teeth are gone.
It's all laughing gas. Like, would you like some laughing gas?
Yeah, like,
but,
I mean,
no, I mean, well, mind you, he like I got all my dental work free from him. He was a fantastic guy, and I think he wrote something. I can't be for sure. I think he wrote something that was done, and I think, if I remember correctly, I'll go back and double check before I say anything about it, but I think he wrote actually something that was put on like HBO or something later on, because he aspired to that. He always wanted to go to do that. He loved being a dentist, but he was, Hollywood was the thing, and he was so proud of his daughter. And then she did Harley Quinn's voice through the animated series. And then she did it for like everything that was coming up until after the first Arkham Asylum game. That was her last time doing it. I think at that point, I can't remember what her name is now. She's the one who did the voice for Miss Minutes. I think she had taken over.
Oh, really?
At that point, yeah. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, she was cool. Like it was cool because Arlene Sorkin, not only was she like in soap operas, she was the voice for Harley Quinn, but then she was also with Dave Coulier back with America's Funniest People back for primetime right after America's Funniest Home Videos. She was the
Coulier who also is you ought to know. So I mean, there's so many ties to that one. But I think also Sorkin. Good call. Sorkin. I'm trying to think of the first name, but Billions. is the writer of either writer or creator of
Well,
Billions.
there's an Aaron Sorkin, and Arlene, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I have to go back and look because I think I almost want to say there was a movie that was out, I think, on, and I'll just say it because if I'm wrong, the internet can correct me. I believe it was like what God had made. It was a movie about like this operation room procedure where these babies were being born blue, and there was this black man who had actually like designed the technique to actually fix that, because the child mortality rate, they weren't getting oxygen necessarily. These babies were born blue, but it took another man, this white man, for people to sign off on allowing this black man to do the procedure. And it was about discrimination and about, you know, a man's talent versus, like, you know, how people perceived him. I'm pretty sure that was done by him, and he it was a great story. So
it's great.
But yeah, absolutely. But with that, let's go ahead.
We hit 100 messages, so keep.
I know
that
we are
amazing.
moving on. Like we've got 15 people on YouTube. We've got 6 people watching on Twitch. And so we can't be happier with you guys being on here with us. But we've got more news. We've got actual news, not just blank screens. Thanks, Sazlov. But let's go ahead and let's look at something coming to streaming, or is actually on streaming right now. And so Donovan, go ahead and show us what you've got to talk about with Game of Thrones, or I should say House of Dragons.
Game of Thrones is back. Well, kind of. The universe of Game of Thrones is expanding with the newest edition, The House of the Dragon, now streaming on HBO Max. New episodes are added every Sunday night. So far, there's 2 episodes streaming, and let me tell you, this show gives you the essence of Game of Thrones, but it is a completely different story. Before Daenerys Targaryen, 172 years before her, in fact, there was another woman who was supposed to take place on the Iron Throne, and her name is Rhaena Targaryen, and this is her story, and it is so incredible so far. The cinematography is gorgeous. It is the feeling of Game of Thrones back in Westeros with the beautiful sights, castles, everything like that. I am so ecstatic to be back here and hopefully give this series another shot after the final season of Game of Thrones. I do have to say that the dragons, the CGI in this show, I feel is already better than it was on Game of Thrones. I'm incredibly excited to see more dragons because I love dragons, and especially being so heavily based on the Targaryen family, we know we're going to get them. But I love the cast. Their acting is superb, and Matt Smith, you put Matt Smith in anything, I'm going to watch it, I'm going to enjoy it, but he is doing great as Daemon so far, and I have mixed feelings on him, especially after that second episode, but you can watch Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon on HBO Max every Sunday, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below.
That's awesome. I mean, you know, it's funny. If you are a not necessarily historical, but like if you're a literary fan, if you are a fan of fantasy, it's like you're eating really well right now.
Oh yeah.
So
you got House of Dragons, and then you also have Lord of the Rings. I mean, I actually had to go back. I had to go back. I mean, House of Dragons is great, and I also think it's really it's cool if you like to investigate and look behind things. It's a really good time because I had to like look at the lineage for House of Dragons. I was like, all right, who's Dany's parents, and I went through that, and so trying to connect the dots there. And then same thing for Lord of the Rings. I watched like 6 videos today trying to figure out like the different eras of Tolkien's like saga and kind of like getting that. So it's really fun if you like to dive deep. And I think Star Wars reminds me of that with like, the old Republic and things like that. I think we're really in a great era where there's a lot of background and expanded material out there for people to kind of like just dive into.
Well, what's really interesting with Rings of Power is it's more there's a lot more. So if you look back, like Lord of the Rings was a great adaptation from the books. Now there's a lot missing from it. The extended edition does a good job bringing some of that stuff in. They did add to it a little bit. It was kind of funny though, because I remember when Lord of the Rings first came out, was my first time just sitting down and just going through the whole Lord of the Rings series. I bought one of those books that had the cover for Fellowship, and it was like the Wraith on the front, and I started reading through it, and I remember spending forever in the forest with Tom Bombadil, and then getting to the movie and be like, where did he go? Like, where did he go? And like there are like little things like that, but honestly, like it was done really well. And of course, people have done things because of Rings of Power being out, like, you know, that almost didn't happen. I believe Miramax had originally signed up to do it, and they didn't want to. They were actually going to do it. They were going to do the 3 movies in 2 movies, and then Miramax was having issues, and they kind of backed out. So Peter Jackson actually went out, and it wasn't until New Line signed up for it and allowed him to do 3 movies that we ended up getting it. And it wasn't even that they were like, yeah, well, let's do this. They actually had to do like a mock-up of a trailer to sell the movie, and they were so blown away by his persistence that, you know, that's how we got it. But what's interesting with Rings of Power is it's a little bit more, I guess it's more of an original story than what we've seen. Like, you can go back and watch, like, read, like, you know, excerpts from stuff that he's had, which in some cases, some people could argue that it's not as faithful, because after J.R.R. Tolkien died, you know, his son kind of took over, and like his estate, to like release sketches and things that he may not have really wanted to be shared to build his world. And so, like, you had things like the Silmarillion and everything else like that. But it's nice to see kind of an original story. And I really was excited when they did the first trailer, because they had that where it was the Rings of Power, and they had the molten lava, the molten metal going through. And everyone was like, that's really great special effects. But then they found out that was actually all done by practical effects. They were literally pouring into the letters to make that. And it was just the amount of effort that they put in to make that look as good as they did showed that if they were going to do that for the teaser trailer for just the title, I had enough faith to be able to sit back. And I haven't been able to go through both episodes yet. Had a little bit of a migraine today, so I missed out a little bit. But what
they're also very long. They're also very, very long.
Yes. But that's the great part about it. Like, these stories, they're not going to like rush the storyline. And I love kind of seeing these things. And it's like, we're getting these other cities other than the ones that we know of. You know, we're not at Hobbiton yet. We're not at, you know, Rivendell. We're, you know, or, you know, did I just say Rivendell? Forget.
Rivendell.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I'm oh my word. I can't believe I just did a Frozen reference. My kid is killing me.
No, get out of here.
Arendelle was
talking about like 30
no, that's even worse. Never mind.
Right now.
Oh my God, I'm just gonna stop now. But like you had like, you know, like you had like the certain places that we've known of. Like I'm kind of like, are we going to see the Misty Mountain? Are we going to see all of these different places? Like there's a potential for all of that. You know, we could see the civilization of the dwarves before Smog and before all this stuff. And I think that's what's exciting about this. And I love that there's like this looming, and it's funny because we're sitting there and everybody's like, oh, you know, Sauron's gone, there's nothing to worry about. And I'm sitting there going, oh, you're an idiot. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, like Elrond. Like, I'm like sitting there like, dude, I loved you in the movies, but like you're like a sniveling politician at first. So
well, I think like I love seeing a different perspective and going deeper. I'm dying for, I mean, I know people have been campaigning for Keanu, for Darth Revan for years. I want to see that in Star Wars. I want to see the Old Republic. I want to see the split of the Jedi into the Sith and the Jedi. Like I went down that rabbit hole in videos like from the expanded universe years ago. I love when you talked about New Line and Miramax, which is now, you know, for people that don't know, HBO Max is actually, I always thought it was like an extra. HBO Max is because it merged with Miramax. So HBO or Cinemax. So it's HBO and Cinemax combined to HBO Max. I love it when people are invested in it. I think that's the problem with, like, you know, obviously, look, like, I don't want to keep like dragging them, but like DC and other places that aren't invested in it, you know, Marvel does it right. It seems like Amazon Prime is really, really has the money, is doing it right.
Yeah.
There's other places too. I think Netflix in the past has done it right as well. So I that's really all. That's the biggest thing, is just investing in it, taking the time and doing it right. And then, like, to your point, doing a different story. Right. I think with Star Wars, and this will come full circle aside from me rambling, but with Star Wars, we got into trouble because people tried to lean in too far into stuff that was already kind of cached, like the Solo movie, or we're going to keep, you know, doing the Skywalker saga, or keep, you know, and I love it, but there's new stuff out there that people want to read that are fascinating. That, you know, that Darth Plagueis, there's, you know, Darth Revan, like there's really fascinating storylines. I love seeing this, and that's what's got me hooked. And I was actually never really a huge huge Lord of the Rings fan years ago. I've watched the movies, obviously, but I'm kind of more into it now, having more respect for it, and I'm kind of all in and really doing like the research and being a huge nerd at this point. So I like it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the fun part about it. I mean, and I think with streaming services, like they can go one of two ways. We don't necessarily need retellings of things, and I think one of the things that really worked for the original Star Wars trilogy was, if you think about it, you know, like everyone loved the Jedi, but you literally only had the two individuals at any time. Like you had Obi-Wan and Darth Vader with Luke training, then you had Luke and Darth Vader, and then you had Luke and Darth Vader again, but then you brought in Palpatine. Like, it wasn't like it was all lightsabers in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was very much a story that, you know, and I also think what really worked for the original trilogy was it didn't take itself seriously to the point where it had to explain how everything worked.
Yeah.
Like they did in the prequel trilogy with the midi-chlorians and stuff. We didn't need that. You just had this idea that it was this old religion that a lot of people didn't believe in anymore, and you know, and you see Han Solo as it's kind of like us, like we don't really believe in the Force, and then later on, like he's even saying, "May the Force be with you," because he realizes it's more. I think that was the one thing I loved about the Secret Trilogy specifically, because when people were like, "You mean you the Jedi are real?" and he's like, "I didn't think they were at one time," but the things that I've seen, like you could see, he believed, and there was that nostalgia of seeing what Luke could do, and Luke made an impression on Han Solo. So, and I think the one thing I really would have wished for the sequel trilogy was having that Han Solo Luke Skywalker like reunion.
Yeah.
That was the one thing. Like, do I mind Rey adopting the Skywalker name? Absolutely not, because we never called Leia Skywalker. Mm-hmm. It was always Leia Organa, and that was okay. You know, and it's the idea of becoming who you are and adopting what you're going to be is like the essence of what Star Wars was all about. Anyone can change from anything that they are.
My biggest regret of that was, I think, as much as I was excited to see him come back, I think the Palpatine, and this goes right into the conversation we're having right now. I love Palpatine. I love the actor Ian McDiarmid who plays him. I think he's fantastic. It was a crutch, and I think again, that's you know, for people that know, obviously the director switched and there was like a big change and whatnot, but I really wanted to learn more about, again, where did he was there for like 5 minutes, so I forgot his name. Where did what's his name come from? Grandmaster, who did Kylo kill? Snoke.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to know where Snoke came from, and then the explanation in The Rise of Skywalker was so cheap, and I just thought, again, I think we all thought it was going to head somewhere really great,
right.
And it didn't, and I think that's really what was the downside for me. I didn't care how Rey ended it. I think it was fine. It stayed true to that trilogy.
Yeah.
I just think we got like it was such like a red herring with Snoke. He was so worthless.
Well, it was almost like he was the puppet of Palpatine. So I think what bothered me with Snoke was because it kind of went against the whole rule of two. And I know that they don't have to follow that, but you had Palpatine leading Snoke, who was leading Kylo, and it was like, okay, really, and of course Kylo was just idolizing his grandfather, which was really strange for me, because like Anakin's redemption, understanding that he didn't have to do those things. Mind you, his political ideology probably never changed, but he realized, you know, bad things can't make good, you know, and he figured that out at the end. But we're talking about a lot about Star Wars. You know, there is something coming up. No, it's okay. Because talking about segues and trying to get into something, Mickey Smith actually has talked about the new Andor series that's coming out on Disney Plus soon. So let's go ahead and give Mickey the floor for a minute.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mickey, also known as Cell Phone Wallet Keys on social media. I'm really happy to be here on Fandoms as part of the Nerd Initiative family, and I'm really excited about the newest addition to the Star Wars universe, Andor, a 12-episode series coming to Disney+. So our story takes place 5 years before the events of Rogue One, and it follows Cassian Andor as he struggles to survive and live under the thumb of the Galactic Empire. We'll also get some glimpses into the foundations of the rebellion in various moments in time. What really sets Andor apart is the gritty, grounded tone of the series that will present us the Star Wars universe at a street level. It'll explore people of various walks of life, tradesmen, artists, journalists, anyone trying to just make a life for themselves in the Empire. Showrunner Tony Gilroy and the production crew really wanted to showcase this tone by building their setting, the town of Ferrix, with full-scale constructed sets in London. Everything from the mansions to the brothels to the housing projects are built in their entirety, as opposed to green screens and the stagecraft used in The Mandalorian and Kenobi. This will create more of an authentic feeling and give us a glimpse of this world at its molecular level. I think one of the most fascinating things I know about the series so far is that Gilroy has stated that this will be able to stand all on its own. You won't need to know the complicated backstories or lore or have seen anything Star Wars really to just pick it up right here. Andor will premiere by dropping its first 3 episodes September 21st on Disney+. Be sure to stay tuned to the Nerd Initiative for more Star Wars news and content. You can find me at the Voice of CWK on TikTok and at Cellphone Wallet Keys pretty much everywhere else. This has been a pleasure, and remember, always forward.
I don't know what I'm more excited about for this series. I think that the fact that they're doing so much practical setting instead of using I thought Mandalorian was really cool because they had those sets, they could expand the world, and they did a good job with the sets with that whole digital, the wall thing. But something about the granular actual physical sets, like an entire little town that they've built, makes it sound so much fun. And I think what's funny is there was a picture that was going through Twitter where I'll make sure everybody can hear. Yeah, my audio is on. I for a second I thought I missed the button again. There was a scene going on where there are these 2 people that are sitting at a booth and they're talking, and they're like, believe it or not, this is a scene from Andor, and it made it more. Wow. It made it more realistic. It could have been anybody today, sitting at this maybe a little bit more of a modern bar, with this booth, and they're just talking, and I feel like we're gonna get a good personal story. We don't have to go off of Andor. We can really kind of see what's going on. And of course there's going to be a lot of Star Wars goodness in it. And we'll probably see aliens and stuff on Andor, but I look forward to the expanding of the stories of these people.
Yeah. I think I have so many thoughts on this because I'm so excited for this, but I think if you look at I love that Tony Gilroy is coming back because he wrote Rogue One. So there's no better person to expand that story. Also, I'm a huge fan because I'm a huge fan of the Bourne trilogy as well. So not the legacy one, but the first 3 I think were excellent. I actually read those books years ago, and I was a huge fan of how they adapted into the film. So I'm a huge Gilroy fan. I think if you compare it to, like you said, just telling a good story, if you look at The Mandalorian versus Boba Fett, right? I think I liked Boba Fett. There was a little bit there that I was kind of it dragged in the middle of the season a little bit. And then obviously Pedro Pascal came back and was like, let me carry this whole universe on my shoulders for you guys again, because he's so ridiculously good. I think, going in there, The Mandalorian is the epitome of good storytelling. Characters, the movement, you don't see his face the entire series, and it's just so well done. And I think so that just goes to show you don't need. Look, Obi-Wan I thought was I love Obi-Wan. The series was way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was incredible, but I think The Mandalorian is a really good study in kind of a character study, and I think they do that with Cassian and Diego Luna. I think it's going to be a success as well. And I just love, again, we talk about the last thing I will say, and I could talk all day about this stuff. We talk about representation, and I will never forget Diego's social media comment years ago when Rogue One came out, and saying essentially, obviously he has a very thick Spanish accent, and it was important to him to just be himself and not have to be something else. And then the pouring from people from the Latin and Spanish community, it just was something special. And you saw these stories of people, and I think one kind of went viral where someone had spoke about I finally see someone that has the thick accent that I have, and so I'll never forget that. Like that just has stayed with me over the years. And that was like a big takeaway from Rogue One. So I just think I'm so excited about all of this. And I think they're going to do it right. And the pieces are there to make a really, another amazing project from the galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. And I have to agree with you. I think the representation is very important. You know, a lot of people have been able to see themselves for decades in film, and it's important that everyone has that chance. And I always say it this way, you know, the world is bigger than our backyard, and it's important for us to see every type of people. You know, and you consider, like, there's been a lot of like complaints from people in the comic book, you know, realm with Spider-Verse, because we're seeing so many different spider people that are coming out. We've got a disabled one who I believe is non-binary. We have, you know, there's a gay Spider-Man. We have a gay person that is taking on the mantle of Captain America, which literally he is like in like I think it was like a jean vest with the star on it, and he had like a trash can lid with a star, and it was like he was protecting his community. And people are like, well, that's just that they're changing the hero. Like, no, they're not taking the heroes away. Imagine in a multiverse where there is a Wanda Maximoff that has the kids and is not, you know, gone, you know, murder witch on everybody. There is a universe out there where there's every type of individual. If you had no problem with a T-Rex being Spider-Man or a pig being Spider-Man, then there's no reason why a disabled non-binary person could be Spider-Man in another universe.
Yeah.
Especially when we saw in Multiverse of Madness, there's an entire universe where everybody's like paint splotches. So let's
yeah,
you know,
it's unfortunate. And I think things tend to get worse before they get better, right? So I think any kind of change people have problems with. I think, you know, I don't think we saw as much, like Michael B. Jordan rumored to play a version of Superman, right? Like a different, not Kal-El, but a different. Right. I think it just, again, it expands the horizons, and you're going to learn more. I can't say enough of how much I learned from Miss Marvel. And I'm not going to be cheesy and be like, oh, I'm a better person and whatever. But it's just a really nice thing to learn about different cultures and perspectives. It's the same thing if you go to a different country and, you know, you learn the culture there. It doesn't have to be race related or gender or whatever. You know, if we go to London, there's something as silly as there's no tipping in restaurants. Like it's something they don't do very often. Or I think in Spain, maybe. Like I always bring up that example. Like that's just happens to be British. You know, like it's different cultures. You want to learn about these things and be a more well-rounded person. Like it's not a new thing. And so I think, you know, look, we're going to get some pushback, but eventually I think hopefully people will begin to adjust and accept this and grow, because we're getting a lot of really, I don't want to curse, but like really amazing, cool characters and storylines and stuff that's just going to really expand your horizons. I mean, you've seen who we haven't had his segment yet, but his piece from, you know, his personal profile he did where he talked about what Miss Marvel meant to him and Amira as well. Like those things stick with you. Like if you're a human being and you see how it affects and hits somebody, it's friggin' cool, man. Like why, you know, like why, I don't know why people hate on that. I understand, again, it's that ownership that they have, but things always change. Things are always going to change. They're not the same way they were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. And you have to just let it go and enjoy it and learn. And
that's the thing. It's okay not to be as passionate as somebody else is. Just because you're not as passionate doesn't mean that you're invalidating what they're excited about. Like for people to come out and say, you know, She-Hulk is messing up the MCU. These stories are messing up this. Why do we have to have this representation and that representation? Well, the reason why you're asking that question is why we need to have it. Because if you don't understand that there are people out there that have been happy with a white Superman for all of these years and would just love to enjoy somebody that looks like them on the screen and like just represent their culture a little bit. You know, like with Wakanda Forever coming out in November, like I am super excited. Like I have loved like the whole aspect of what Ryan Coogler has done and the staff have done, like the cast have done with this movie. And like even the previous Black Panther, like they gave respect to the African people. They gave respect to that context that, you know, it was almost like the world thinks of. And there's a TikTok creator on there's a TikTok creator on TikTok, and I believe she's a teacher in Kenya, and people ask the dumbest questions. Do you have candy in Kenya? And she's sitting there like, no, I don't have candy. She's got like Butterfingers and Hershey's and everything. Like, people don't understand. You know, you go to Africa, they're not living like, yes, there are some places that are more what you would consider third world, but like the majority of people in these countries, they don't live without the same things that we have. Like, you just expand your horizon, go take a trip, go touch some grass. You might see. But like you said with Yassine, like I've been amazed to kind of see where he's going with anime. And speaking of that, he's given us a quick blip on just things to look forward to, and just recapping, because unfortunately I feel like they didn't advertise it enough, but there actually was a Dragon Ball movie in theaters, and unless you were playing Fortnite, you probably didn't know. So let's go ahead and see what Yassine has to say.
Hey, I'm Yassine. Have you seen that guy? And here's the anime news you may have missed. Dragon Ball Super Superhero crushed it at the box office, now ranking as the 5th highest grossing anime film in the US, followed by these films. Next, in October, we are going to eat. We have Spy Family coming back, My Hero Academia Season 6, Chainsaw Man, Mob Psycho Season 3, Bleach, Blue Lock, and so much more. Finally, here's your anime fact for the day. Did you know the boar head Inosuke wears is actually the head of the boar that raised him?
So good.
Absolutely. And it's great to see that Dragon Ball actually, I think it was Dragon Ball Super actually was able to get, you know, at least to get recognition within the anime. I think it would have done better if it would have had more advertisement. I almost feel like the anime community just does not get the credit. I know, listen, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, and I, for probably 5 minutes, enjoyed Dragon Ball Evolution when they did the live action movie. It was interesting for a minute, and then I went back and watched it again and realized I was probably half asleep when I watched it. And
it's like the live action Street Fighter movies that they have here.
Yeah, but let's not go there, because Raul Julia as Bison was perfect. Like that first Street Fighter. Let's just go. And at the end when he hits the rewind button, like I was all for that. But like I Dragon Ball Z was like I loved watching that. I would watch that after school. And then I'm now recently getting into Naruto. And of course that's been a lot of fun. My son ends up watching that with me a little bit when I tell him he can't, you know, watch the tablet or something when we're going to bed. But literally, like, it's been so much fun. And it's hilarious because it was Nerd Initiative that got me to watch Naruto, and it was specifically this. You know, Yassine's going to be doing more with anime with our site and with anime onlys, and I wanted to be supportive, and I was at like a Burlington, and they had a Naruto shirt where Naruto's eating ramen. I'm like, I'm gonna get it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna watch the show, and then I didn't realize what I was putting myself into, and it's funny though because I'm looking at what he put in that clip that he just did, and I'm like, wow, anime can be fast paced.
Yeah.
I promise you, there are some episodes of Naruto where it's like the one battle that takes all of 5 minutes is like 3 episodes long.
Well, it's also hard. It's also hard because for those who don't know, it's hard to know where Yassine's an amazing video editor, so it's hard to know where his editing stops and the clip begins because
I know.
I know, like he's so good, it's insane.
With the little. Where it like goes into him and stuff, like please, I'm like, we really need to invest in somebody that can just animate him, because I think anytime he does a bit, he needs to be an anime character. Like that.
I mean, I literally was asking myself, like at that clip where they do the 3D, and when it goes from Yassine to the clip and it kind of pivots, I was like, did Yassine do that, or is that from the movie? Like, I honestly was thinking, like, did he do it somehow? Because I know how talented of an editor he is, so I was like, I could see him making.
Also, is him picking like the best shots, like me. If I'm putting something together, I'm throwing things. I literally, when I was trying to do my YouTube page, and I was doing like the clips about like Shang-Chi and like what to look forward to in the movie, like I took the trailer and I'm like, I'm gonna take this and this, and okay, I'm tired, let's just throw everything else in. Like you get a little bit tired, but like that was like for like the shortest segment in this show was like the most like flashy, and I love that. I love it absolutely. But it makes you excited. Like I'm literally gonna be looking for these shows, and I'm terrified because I want to get into One Piece, but I've heard it's like over 1,000 episodes.
Oh wow!
And so it's like, do you want to do that to yourself? And I'm sitting there going, I kind of think I do. I think I want to. Like I want to be a part of this community as much as possible.
Well, I think
it's
interesting. It would never be a better time, because I think like just having talked to Yassine and having talked to Pooja and Amira and all the other people that are into anime, and you are starting into as well, and Blake, who is fantastic with his like recommendations and his knowledge of anime. I think, and I don't want to jinx it where it's like, remember when soccer was supposed to be big in the United States like 10 years ago? We're like, oh, we're getting David Beckham, it's going to be amazing. And it's like, no. I think in like 5 or a few years' time, and it already is huge in the States, I think it's going to be this incredibly gigantic phenomenon that is like rivals the MCU, where it's up there with like all these like genres where like, you know, 1 in every 3 movies or show is going to be anime. Like, I think it's just becoming such a big phenomenon, and it's already huge. And so, yeah, I think we're going to look back and it's going to be like, was it ever not like completely submerged in our culture?
It's the whole thing of like the United States is behind in a lot of these things. Like we're just not, we don't look at, I feel like we keep ourselves this puzzle. We have this like, you know, this American idealism that we think everything that comes out of us is fantastic. And we're seeing, and I love like especially with Pooja, like if you watch her TikToks, like she'll bring up something like that's coming out of Bollywood or whatever else. Like she talks about things that are not just, you know, American blockbusters, and I love that because it makes me like, okay, you know, I want to watch that. Like there are some movies on Netflix right now that are just like outrageously crazy, but they're just fun because they're not meant to be this serious world building thing. It's supposed to be just a fun movie that you can take yourself out of and just enjoy. And I think we lose that when we don't look at the rest of the world. Like I can tell you right now, just like there have been like some like Ip Man with Chinese productions, and like you have Train to Busan that was on Netflix, and all of these other, like there are some fantastic movies and fantastic shows that like you don't get to see if you're not willing to go out there. And a lot of people are sometimes scared about, you know, subtitles, and I tell you, don't do it. Don't be afraid of subtitles. They're okay. And
I mean, Squid Game, like I mean, look, talk about a phenomenon. If people were afraid of subtitles and didn't watch that, I mean, that was at the time about as popular a project as we've ever seen. And because the storyline was just incredible, it's just a fascinating show, and you can't expand your horizons, and don't let fear stop you from, and don't let fear or just regularity stop you from watching something cool and something different. I mean, all right, this is a different tangent and whatever, but I'll be brief. My wife, obviously, everyone has their guilty pleasure. Ours is 90 Day Fiance. We've had conversations.
No judgment.
And I just think it's just a fascinating show. I know Donovan's really into The Circle. We are as well. There's a lot of stuff out there that you may not think you'd be into, but you should give it a shot. And then there's other things you might think you are into, and you try it and you're like,
you know, it's funny. My wife is into the show where it's like all the mama's boys and like how bad they are, and she keeps coming up to me and talking to me about them, and I'm like, are you trying to give me a hint? Like, are you trying to tell me something? And she's like, no, I'm not saying it. You're not like that, because I'm a mama's boy, and it's okay to be a mama's boy, but not.
Wait, what is the show? Because
it's literally, I don't know what the exact title is. Rebecca, if you're in the chat, you can like say what it is.
Please drop it in.
But please drop it in. But it's literally like these guys in relationships, either they're married or they're engaged, and the mother is like it's like mom and then the significant other. Like the son has like regular mani pedis with the mom, or like it's like outrageous stuff, or like they're talking about having children, but he has to talk to his mom first before they decide if they're going to do it. Like it's
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
like it's like that thing, and I'm sitting there going, you're not trying to drop any hints right
Is it
now.
like it's either me or your mom or something like
yes,
that?
Yes, I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. So like, yeah, this is a fandom show. I get all types of fandoms. If you like reality stuff, I can't handle
Everything
those
is a
things.
fandom.
I can listen. I'm the guy that if you were to look at like my preferences, the things I watch, I would look like a dude bro, because I don't like rom-coms, and it's nothing against the rom-coms except for I can't handle anxiety very well. And when you have like, and this is always my reference, 27 Dresses, the scene where they're having like the party and she does the presentation, I have never seen that scene. I've always gotten up and walked out of the room because I cannot handle it, because I have anxiety, like high anxiety, and I can't deal with that stuff. Like there are like when you like what was the one with Patrick Dempsey back in the day? Where it was like, you can't buy me love.
Can't Buy Me Love.
Like when like he's like with that other girl, and like you realize he's falling in love. He's always loved her, but she's falling in love with him. But then he's his popularity I've never seen those parts. Like I don't know, because I can't watch them. Like
that's fair.
All. So like there are moments where I'm watching movies and I will either get on my phone or I'll get up and walk out of the room because I cannot deal with it. And so it's not against those movies. It's literally I can't deal, because I don't know how people can deal with like emotional drama. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but then I find out that I am it. So, you know, it's kind of life as usual. It's me. I think what we were talking about, like one thing is like, it's like, you know, if you're all out of sorts, I'm like, I guess that's me on a Monday. So let's get back on topic. And so, Sean Winningham is, our senior multimedia producer. And he also did a segment talking about some stuff that's upcoming in Marvel Comics. Not the MCU shows, but in the Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and touch on that real quick.
Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Caption Live Show and a member of Nerd Initiative, and I'm here to bring you your top 3 stories of Marvel news. Story number 1, Fantastic Four may have found its director. Deadline reported that Marvel Studios is in the talks with Matt Shakman, who directed projects like Game of Thrones, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and MCU WandaVision, to be the next director of Fantastic Four. This does mean that he will be leaving the Star Trek 4 movie that he was previously working on, and that he will be placing John Watts, who was originally pinned to be the director. Story number 2, Marvel announces their next project, Remasterworks. Remasterworks will be new printings of the early Marvel Masterworks, but now with improved restoration, new bonus material, scans of the original art, essays and covers, and all other kinds of collections. They will debut this next year, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, which will include scans of the original artwork from Amazing Fantasy 1962, number 15, which debuted Spider-Man, and then they'll follow that up with the Fantastic Four Volume 1 and the X-Men Volume 1. Story number 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff version, comes out today. After debuting less than a year ago, the extended version will include 11 minutes of unseen footage, which will reportedly have more scenes with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, the MCU villains across the multiverse, and more screen time with Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Did you hear that, buddy? Are you excited? Yeah. And those are your top 3 Marvel news for the Nerd Initiative.
I'm super excited about that Masterworks. Like the fact that they're doing scans of the original pages. There is something about comic books today and comic books. I loved. This is gonna sound really stupid. One of the things I loved about going and reading my comic books when I had them as a kid was the catalog sections.
Oh, the $1 and $5. Like, oh, we can give you Spider-Man $300 for $5.
There was that one. Like you get the back orders, and I'm sitting there going, I should have done it.
Oh yeah,
I can't believe I didn't. But then there's also the ones where it's like the decoder rings and the submarine things, and like all that the trash that you're not gonna ever keep. But like what was it? The 3D glasses. Like
and there's I think there's hypnosis on the old cons in the 60s. Hypnosis is learn to hypnotize people and get them to do your bidding. And
but it's cool because when you look at the different decades with comic books, like the 80s and 90s, like it changed a little bit because when the 80s you had those still, and then in the 90s it was all of the It was the video game advertisements.
Yeah.
And you sit back and you look at those, and you're like the nostalgia that comes from that is just amazing. And like you don't hear so much anymore, like Namco and all that stuff, like the Sega Genesis cartridges for like Sonic 2 and stuff coming out. So I always love that. So it's kind of neat because I want to go back and read the story because, mind you, like I've already told you before, and my wife knows this. The day that I know that I've arrived in life and that I feel like I can call myself rich is when I own a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, and I don't even care. I don't even need a 9 because I don't even know if they really exist out there. I don't believe they exist because that's like $1 million.
There's a couple.
I'd be okay with like a 2 that's like $40,000. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if it's yellow and everything else. I'll just sit there and I'll look at it through this little glass case.
As a history fan, and I agree with you on the all that. I mean, if I had any big regrets, right? In college, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, which was like the early days of eBay. I remember I kind of had been out of it. Like I was a kid, I was into comics and I had original art and, I was really into it. Then I got out of it. And then in college, I think it was around the time of the Spider-Man movie, the original ones coming out. And I was like kind of getting back into it. And I was like, let me check this out. Or maybe it was like Spider-Man 2 or 3 that was coming out. And I remember seeing, and this is such a ridiculous joke now, a copy of AF-15 that was like had a ripped cover. So like,
okay.
And it was like on eBay.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, nobody wants to. They call them reader copies, and it was like $50. And that is now probably $15,000 to $20,000 because it's probably like a 1 or a 0.5, like whatever. And I remember just being like, I remember thinking like, oh, I'll buy that one day. And like, you're a poor college kid, but like, just to think of like these pieces of history that,
Well, it's like your interview with what was it, Borak?
Steve Borak, yeah.
Steve Borak. Like talking
who essentially
about
founded grading, basically came up with the whole system of
and like him selling his comics and then finding them back on his table to be graded. Like I cannot imagine. Like there are comic books that we've seen at conventions, like when we were at AwesomeCon, like we were drooling over it. I'm sitting there going like, that's worth like $100-something. I had that. And I remember like when we moved out to the country, I had gone to a comic book shop and dropped off a box of my comics that had like Lethal Protector and like some of the Venom ones, and it had the what was it, the Wolverine where the claws were broken. Like you had like all of those, and like the guys like we're not going to really offer anything for it. And it would have taken me an hour and a half to get to them to pick up the comics, and I just left them there. And odds are they either sold them or threw them out, and I'm sitting there like, why?
There's no way to know. I mean, and I think Borak put it well, because obviously if you look at his, and we've done an interview with him, and when you've been in the industry long enough, you're going to have these kinds of stories, but he owned 2 Action Comic ones, which for those who don't know is the first appearance of Superman, and basically is the grail of all grails. It is the birth of superheroes, essentially. Like Action Comics 1 is in 1938 is the book, which is probably in any grade at this point is worth over $1 million. And he sold one of his copies for decent profit of what he got it for. But I think
I remember one sold in the 90s for $1.2 million.
Yeah, it was like the best condition copy in the world, right?
But that was in the 90s. We're talking about what, almost 30 years from now.
So he's like in the 80s, and I think it was also things have changed. He sold, I think it was a restored copy, which again, at this point, it doesn't matter. Like if you have Detective 37 with the first Batman or Action Comic, like it's fine. Like take anything. But he sold it for like $100,000. I think it was to either Charlie Sheen or Nick Cage. So and if they still have it, I know Nick Cage is a huge Superman fan. I'm sure he's still got it. That book's probably worth like $2 million, maybe if it's a 5 or 6. Like
that's why he would go go out of the country and play himself and get into trouble, because he's not selling that comic book. He needs money other ways.
Yeah.
So.
So I mean, we got off topic a little bit, but I think like to what you were saying with the ads of comics, and if you look at the 1960s, I love if you look at how they change over time. The 60s, remember the backs had, and And they were longer too. It's like movies. Like, remember when movies used to be in a movie theater for 8 months, 6 to 8 months or whatever?
I remember Jurassic Jurassic Park. Like, I think I waited almost a year for it to come out. We're spoiled now, and we don't realize it.
It comes and goes, and everything's so much faster now. If you look at most of the early and mid 60 books, there's this weird ad, and it's in so many books, and it's like learn to draw like Norman Rockwell. The one where it's the old guy that like it is, and it's for years. And then, like you said, in the 70s, 80s, and things go on, then you have like Evel Knievel in the 70s. I think the first Punisher, the back of that book is, but then it's like video games, and they change every issue. And then, but like the first 3 to 5 years of like the Marvel age of comics was all the same back. It was learn to draw like Norman Rockwell and like some like, and so I love looking at books and seeing stuff. And I actually love it. Even though it lowers the value if you have vintage books and they have writing or stuff on it, because someone had these and cared for them and like put their own like historic stamp on it. So it's just, I can't get enough of like.
Yeah, because I remember when you broke the seal on your, what was it, the first appearance of Punisher?
Spider-Man 129.
So before you got it signed, how many times did you go peruse through it? And how did you do it? Did you kind of like
twice? Like, yeah, it's very, because you don't want to also like, there's things that you get so scared because of the staples sometimes, if it's a really old book. I have a first Galactus and a first Kang. And so those are even older. And I think the Galactus one, like when you pull it looks intact, and it is intact, but when you pull the cover back, the staple is like the cover, it wears. And there's a reason that I didn't know about. Older books are scarcer in good condition for a certain reason. And then I'll stop rambling. I think it was Borak who told me this. Like, if you think about like Auto Trader, right? Like, it's like just a throwaway thing you get at a newsstand that's like has the ads and like it has like your local cars for sale or whatever. You think about stuff like that. That's what comic books were supposed to be. So they were supposed to be just these like really silly throwaway storylines that were just packed with ads, and they were supposed to read it and be like, whatever, kids would throw it out. And so they talk about the early comics Marvel chipping. So Marvel chipping is basically the covers are so, they're not meant to last. And so if you can get a cover of like an AF-15 or a Spider-Man 1 that doesn't have that Marvel chipping, it's so hard. But it's just cool. I love this stuff. And obviously I'm going to put all our viewers to sleep, so I'm going to stop talking. But I think this stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, at some point we're going to have to do like an off fandom show where we can talk about like the whole thing, because I know like we've talked about doing a rundown of like Marvel and how Marvel was. And when Marvel Comics first came out, like Atlas Comics, you had you know them doing it. This was when the publisher originally had just built doing like Westerns books. Like they threw out books as fast as they could. Like if you go back and you look at like, we know like the Hardy Boys and stuff like that, but like even farther back in the early 1900s, they were throwing books out like magazines, and it was just get them out as quickly as possible. Just something for people to, something with content, because there's not TV, there's not like if you wanted to see moving pictures, you had to go to a theater to do so. That's how people learned about the war, and so they translated that like just get it out there, and it doesn't need to connect with the comic books until later on. They just started building continuity. But what's also interesting is we have this. We talk about DC, we talk about Marvel. There are so many different like indie comics. I think about the amazing Nick Anger who did an op-ed for us about Radiant Black. JJ's made some great recommendations.
Great stuff.
JJ's got some great recommendations coming up for like our spooky season, and so I'm going to go ahead and throw it over with him, let him talk about some things, and then there's one I'm specifically excited about, so I can't wait to talk about it. So here we go.
What's going on, everybody? Jeremy from Nerd Initiative here with my top 3 comic book runs starting in the month of September. First off, coming out of Boom Studios, we have Stuff of Nightmares. Acclaimed author RL Stein jumps back into the world of comic books with his very first creator-owned series. This is the first in a reimagining series of all the classic horror stories you know and love. And this first one is going to be a reimagining of the mad scientist Dr. Frankenstein. Frankenstein. And this time, instead of just the one doctor, there's actually two brothers, and what they create puts Dr. Frankenstein's creation to shame. And a parental advisory out for this book because this is not for children. Stuff of Nightmares #1 is set to hit store shelves on September 21st. Next up from IDW Publishing, we have Star Trek's Lower Decks. Ryan North is jumping in as the writer on this creation, and is jumping straight off the screen from Paramount Plus straight into the comic books. The story is set to start out with the bridge crew handling a diplomatic mission, while the Lower Decks crew enjoys some time off on the holodecks. That is until a not-so-welcome visitor comes to ruin the party. If you're a fan of this hit series on Paramount Plus, then you gotta check out this comic book run. Star Trek Lower Decks is beaming into comic book stores near you on September 14th. And my number 3 pick is Boogeyman, coming from Ablaze Comics. The main character, Elliot, is a child with a very strong passion for reading, and his favorite books to read are those about the boogeymen, the monsters in the world. But after witnessing the brutal murder of his parents, Elliot learns that boogeymen are in fact real, and there are actually strict laws and forces governing their existence. If you're looking for something spooky to read before spooky season, this is definitely a book you want to check out. Boogeyman #1 creeps into comic book stores on September 7th. Now, if you want more details on these and other new comic book runs that are coming here soon, you can find all this same information and more on previewsworld.com. And once again, my name is Jeremy, aka JJ's Comic Stuff, and this has been your 2-minute comics segment.
Okay, Stuff of Nightmares is something I'm really looking forward to. Like the RL Stein, I was a huge Goosebumps fan as a kid. I read all of it. I had a really unfortunate interaction with RL Stein. Not that he's not a bad person. I wasn't expecting the mole because they had not, when I saw him, they had not done the show where you first see him, because that thing does stick out, and like you kind of like look up at it and you think it's looking back at you. But we went, my mom took off work, we went to a bookstore, they were having the signing, there was like hundreds of people, and now looking back on it logistically, it makes sense as an adult, but as a kid who's so excited, I had my first copy of The Haunted Mass, the first Goosebumps book, and I was so excited. I went to hand it to him, and the security guy is like, no, and they just hand me this sticker, and it was literally like a "Hi, my name is" like sticker with RL Stein, and it was literally like written out like, you mean you write books and you don't have signet, like you can't do like actual cursive. And
was this during COVID? He just didn't want. He didn't want.
Talking about during COVID, I was like 11 or 12 years old like when this happened, and so like they handed it to me, and I'm like, but I want him to sign my book, and my mom got one, I got one, so I had two of his signatures. I don't know where they are now, because I honestly, knowing how celebrities do stuff, I don't believe it was really his signature. He probably had people back there just signing for him. But I remember like before we left, there were these stickers that were made, they were on the floor that looked like monster footprints with monster blood that said Goosebumps. I remember my mom's like let's just take one. So we reached down and ripped one off the floor and just took it. So that was my thing. Like I met the guy, but I didn't get the.
Well, it's a bummer because I mean, and you're being very kind and generous about that, and it's fine. And then again, look, I understand. Like, I don't know what it's like to have hundreds of adoring fans, like, you know, trying to get my autograph or whatever. Obviously, so I can imagine, but at the same time, like when it comes to kids, I feel like there's a different thing there when you involve kids. And there's a lot of people that do that. Like I know Todd McFarlane is notorious where he is. There was one story I saw on Instagram that really epitomized him. He wants to sign for fans and not for collectors and people that are, you know, going to resell. So if you work at a convention, he won't autograph your stuff unless he knows you. Like he wants to sign for the fans. So I get it. And there was someone on Instagram that it was a really like disappointing story that he was like a huge fan of Todd's, but he happened to be like volunteering at a convention or somewhere overseas. And the security guy was like, no flippers or collectors or whatever. And so he had to give it to somebody else. He's like, I've been trying to get this book signed for I don't know how long. And so, and Jerry Rice is the same way. Jerry Rice only signs kids.
I have a confession to make. Todd McFarlane was at my first convention, and I'd bought a Spawn Volume 1 like book and got him to sign it and then sold it. This was 12 years ago, so don't judge me. But like, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time.
I mean, I can one up you really quickly. I mean, my notorious story is that I owned Hulk 181, which is, for those who don't know, it's the first Wolverine, and it was a very good condition Hulk 181. I sold it in college, probably for a couple $100 because I wanted to get rims for my new car.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
No, but those are the things that we will always like hold to us that, you know, we should have never done.
Bonehead moves, you do it, you know, whatever. But I guess at the same time, look, my story, there's no talking around it, but everyone has their
and then the next week after you bought them, the rims fell off the car, and
yeah, probably.
Yeah, in the gutter.
Or got into an accident because I was like 20 years old or whatever, and stupid. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and everyone makes like really, you know, I mean, there was one of the last story that Borak told me that I will say, and then we can get away from comics, but was that he was outbid for a Detective 27, which is the first appearance of Batman, and it was like a 6-0 or something, and this is in the 70s or 80s, and he was barely outbid. He went up to his max, and he just got barely, and I think it was like 50 grand. That's a $3 million book right now, or whatever it is. So
that's like when you get that times are really hard and they're getting even harder, and it's like, ugh.
You never know. There's
the things that you could do, like, oh my goodness.
No one has a crystal ball, and you have life that comes in the way.
Tell me about
minus souping up your car and being stupid, but like life comes in your way, and way more important things step in the way, and you gotta do what you have to do, and you know, and they're comics. At the end of the day, they're comics, they're collectibles, they're autograph, whatever it is you have. Yeah. It's not as important as, you know, family and health and more important things. So.
Yeah, it's funny though, because like, you know, just thinking about how, you know, I've surrounded myself with collectibles, and I've had some fantastic fans that have given me stuff. And like, as we talk about things that are like when money gets tight or when something needs to be done, we like I always come out, the first thing I say is, hey, look, I can sell this and this, and they're like, my family's like, no, you're not doing that, you know, don't do that, you will regret that to the, you know, and I get that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, we imagine like all of these moments where everybody goes through where they had something. And that's why I think it's important we do things like this, where we talk about our experiences, because we can, like, for this younger generation, you know, you don't know what you've got in your hands, so treat everything well, you know, be careful with things, value them. I look at stuff and I'm like, you know, I was a big like Thundercats fan, and I was a big He-Man and the Masters of the Universe fan. Like, those toys are worth like exuberant amounts of money, and it's like, I did not take care of them well. I remember even my Ghostbusters, the all new Ghostbusters, when they did the cartoon after the movies. I would we would have those fake ficus plants in the house. I would literally bury my figures in the sand because they die in my game, like whatever I was doing. I buried the sand, like corroded them big time. You know, and you don't think about those things.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like, I think above like what you have in hand, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Above all else, I mean, that's what they're meant. That's exactly what's meant to happen. That's why, like I said, like, I love seeing, you know, when you see history and stuff, I love seeing, you know, if there was something I saw recently, I always look on Instagram for all these like these collectibles that are there, because I just, you know, we're all voyeurs at heart, right? We love seeing this stuff. And someone said something, there was like some kid's name written on a cover of like, say, a Fantastic Four 1 or something like that. I think that's cool. I think you're getting something as part of history. And I think there was someone who's really, his name is, it's Sanderson Studios, and he does a lot of like restoration and conservation of historic documents and books. And this is a beautiful story that I hope I don't butcher, but I think it was an old book from the 40s or 50s. He was able to get back to the family. So he purchased it from the person who was having it restored. And I don't want to butcher the story, because I remember I was taken by it and I didn't get the details in there, but I saw him and he was like, I'm going to buy this book, and I'm going to he found the family because the name, like the person's name was inscribed on it. And like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a cool story. And like, again, like it's if you work in that industry and these things cross your desk every day and like whatever, and you love doing what you're doing and you get, you've been doing it for so long, there's no better feeling than that. And so that's something that's going to stick with that guy who works in restoration and works in that. And that's way more valuable than anything he could own. And I mean, I can only imagine the reaction if he gives it to his daughter or granddaughter or whoever it is. That's so cool. So I mean, that's enjoy
that
it.
story is just fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're getting to about 10:30, so we want to wrap up so that people don't feel like we're taking their entire evening, since it is a holiday weekend with Labor Day coming up on Monday.
Wait, we're not going until Monday. We're just gonna keep. I thought we were just gonna go live for 72 hours and just
some people have to sleep and watch anime and watch Rings of Power. And so we're definitely going to have to wrap it up. But just a couple things to remind everybody about. D23 is coming up on this next week. We have Disney Plus Day on the 8th, which is also the dropping of Thor: Love and Thunder, as well as some other fantastic stuff. We're looking forward to the Hocus Pocus 2 movie that's coming out on Disney Plus, as well as next week. We didn't talk about this, but Pinocchio, which looks like a really fun retelling. And like it for me, I feel like like there were things that I enjoyed about Aladdin that were very close to the cartoon, and I think they're doing that with Pinocchio. It looks just like fun, and seeing Tom Hanks as Geppetto is just a lot of fun. And like I think the puppet being true to the cartoon it just makes it a lot of fun. So I'm very excited about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's a lot.
No,
you
mentioned D23. Like obviously, I think within D23, Saturday, so a week from tomorrow is going to be the Marvel panel, which is I think 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time out there, and that I mean we should expect. I don't even know what to expect. I don't even want, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty. I think they've been holding a lot of amazing things. We're going to get a lot of good stuff.
Now they were teasing, I think it was on the Twitter feed, promoting the Disney Plus Day on the 8th, and they had an image of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and they had the claws coming out. So I don't know what that means, what they're doing with that, but I think Disney's just going to play with our emotions as much and as long as they can.
Yeah,
and I'm kind of here for it. I mean, they got my wallet by with both hands.
I am excited. If we're supposed to go to D23, I am excited to see the first trailer for Mephisto. I know it's going to come out. I'm really, really pumped for that. It's going to be a great show. We've been waiting for it for years. So yeah, I mean, it's been Mephisto all along. So I'm really excited for that.
Right, and then next month is we're already in September, but next month we're already talking about next month. New York Comic Con is going to be happening. So that's going to be that should be a lot of fun. And I know Shortbox is planning on doing some things there, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen. But yeah, this has been Fandoms. Now, one of the things that we're doing at the end of the show, we're not going to just cut it off and cut you guys short. We have a fun thing. JJ on our TikTok account reached out and asked people to stitch their nerd origin story. And if you've watched anything on our YouTube channel, you've seen our creator spotlights on our website. We're all about how did you start your nerd origin story? Where did it all begin? And we had some great great contributions, some stitches. We couldn't use all of them, so this is going to be something we're going to try to do for a while. And so, like, starting this week for our next show, which if you don't know, September 16th, I believe it is. Let me just double check, make sure I'm not wrong. Yep, September 16th. So we're going to try to do this every 2 weeks. Is going to be our next show. We will hope to have some more stitches from people. And again, these are not the full videos. I highly recommend in the credits you'll see their them tagged. Please go back and watch those videos.
So good.
They're so good, and there's a lot of good stuff we weren't able to add to it. But again, just stick around, just watch it. There might also be some fun things to look at in the credits. But anything else you want to say real quick, Michael, before we get off?
No, I mean, you said it. Like, I've been waiting. The stuff that people, I just want to say thank you to everyone that not only that's watching, but also that contributed, from from JJ to Yassine to Pooja to Mickey, Sean. I mean, they, and I know I can actually speak for you in this and saying this, like the work they've done is beyond incredible. And then on top of that, it's just fundamental in our DNA of what we do and what we get thrilled for.
Yeah.
These origin stories, I am just over the moon about, and it's definitely not the last time we're going to do it. And I just love being able to tell people's story. That's what we want to do, and just support and elevate people. And so I have no words. It's just amazing what everyone submitted, from their heart and what they love. So,
and the quality of it, just like taking in the recommendations, like things that I wouldn't have thought of. Like, I know, like when we started like planning this show out, like I said, hey, there's this, and talk about this and this, like especially with Sean when he was talking about like you said those masterpiece series, those books that are scanned and you can get a copy of. Like, mind you, they're not going to be as valuable as the originals, but at least you can go back and you can have that feel of reading that story. Because how many people have really read Amazing Fantasy 15?
Yeah.
Like like you can go to Marvel Unlimited, but like people don't really think to do it, and you can have a tangible copy that you can really like go back and look through and see. And that's the thing I think I love about Nerd Initiative is there are people with so many different passions, and the reason why it's called Fandoms is being a fan it can be from any point in a property story. It can be from anything, and it really does. It molds and makes you. This is our lore. This is our mythology, our mythos. And for us to be able to share that and to get everybody's point of views, and we didn't touch on a lot of things. We didn't get into gaming, like literally. And I'm gonna say this before we get off. Like Squirrel with a Gun, like looks like a fantastic game. Like I don't know what it is. Like a squirrel holding a guy up for his cell phone. Like I want to see that happen. We've got Midnight Suns coming. We've got there's all of these things that are going on. And like Fortnite. If you did not hear. It looks like in the next season of Fortnite, we're going to have Ghost Spider. So if you like Spider-Gwen, it's coming. So there's so much to talk about that we weren't even able to touch. And so as we get more comfortable with this, and as our contributors kind of get a feel of what they want to do, I can't wait to just touch on lots of things. And you may not be as passionate as some people are, but it doesn't mean that the fandom doesn't exist and that it's not important. Yeah. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for being here. You've made this a fantastic first show. For all of our contributors, you've been amazing. And Michael, thank you so much for partnering with me and being on this journey with me. I cannot wait to see what we do next and where we go, because honestly, the sky's the limit. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and lead to the credits and enjoy these fantastic origin stories.
I'm 12 years old, I guess I would be if I think back, and I was kind of a mama's boy.
So I've always really been the kind of person into like things that are like fantastical, fantasy, science fiction, magic. I really kind of credit my mom for a lot of that. I joke that she raised my sister and I on equal parts Star Trek Next Generation and Xena Warrior Princess.
It all started when I was a kid. One superhero, one super team. Super being Spider-Man, and super team being Fantastic Four.
Probably about 7 or 8, I started watching the X-Men cartoon back in the 90s.
Believe it or not, I wasn't always into superhero movies. I didn't really care about the Batman or Superman movies. I didn't want to watch the X-Men movies. Really, the only superhero movies I liked were the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
I had sheer curiosity, and I was a very fortunate kid because I had a set of encyclopedias inside my bedroom.
So I would kind of tag along with my mom when she would run errands and things like that, and she used to go get her hair and her nails done a lot. And right next to the salon there was a place called the Reader's Exchange, which was a used bookstore that also sold comics.
And whenever I was a kid, I wouldn't read comic books, I would just look at the pictures, but I was still like a big fan of Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four because I've seen the movies and I loved them so much. I got like all the toys.
Then came the fateful day in 2010 when my dad bribed me to go see Iron Man 2 with him. Not with money, but with caramel corn.
For things that weren't in the encyclopedia, I had a tendency to really enjoy hands-on learning.
The only comics I've read in my early years were the Garfield and Calvin Hobbes comic strips, so those were technically my first comic books I ever read.
My first memory of watching anything superhero based is watching the 80s and 90s Batman movies with my dad.
First time I walked in there, basically she said, okay, you can pick out one. You know, she pointed at the comic rack and said that I could pick out one, which probably was the last time that I ever just bought one.
I took this same curiosity to the family computer.
And I think what started me on the path to my giant graphic novel collection that I have now was definitely when I started getting into anime and manga in middle school.
And it's kind of weird to think about, but I can thank my dad and Caramel Corn for me eventually finding my favorite character of all time.
And I went to a really popular comic shop near my hometown, and I got Batman Hush.
What happens next? My dad walks in on me and he sees the entire computer taken apart in the living room.
One day, that might be something that I would want to do, and now I have, you know, my small but mighty comic book store here.
And ever since then, I just went on an exponential line upwards on my passion for comic books.
But yeah, it all started with the X-Men cartoon. Saturday mornings. The only thing my brother and I would agree on TV.
And on the wall here at the store, I keep a picture of this kid, because he's the one that walked into that store. And I also still have that first comic. Thanks, Mom.